Today I'm sharing my 13 favorite tarot books. It was supposed to be 12, and I was going to call this the 12 Books of Christmas, but then I couldn't narrow it down, so you have one more to choose from. Welcome to my channel where we're learning how to read tarot one card at a time. I will be using the Radiant Rider-Waite Tarot, and there is a link for the cards I use below. I chose to make this video because today is Black Friday in the United States, which is officially the start of the holiday shopping season. Although this year I was shopping for Halloween candy in Costco in early October, and they already had their Christmas stuff out, so I think it starts way earlier than that. Regardless, I thought this was a great time to share 13 of my favorite tarot books. If you wanted to add them to your holiday shopping list, buy one for a fellow tarot lover, or, my personal favorite, just buy them for yourself. These are all books that I've used heavily over the last year as I dove deep into learning tarot. I'll tell you why I chose each book, as well as what I do and don't like about each of them. I've put Amazon links in the description, but feel free to support your local, independent bookseller if you can. I also couldn't rank which ones were best, because they are all appropriate for different needs, so these books are in alphabetical order. So let's get started. Book number 1 is Exploring Tarot Using Rider-Waite by Avia Venefica. This was the book that came with my Rider-Waite Tarot deck, which is my favorite deck, and I've used this book so much that the spine is broken. It's a really great book for beginners. It's beautifully laid out in full color, and each card has 2 facing pages. On the left-hand side is a picture of the card and a one-paragraph description of what the card means. Then there are 4 questions to answer as you contemplate the meaning of the card. There's also several keywords for the upright and reversed meaning, and a quote about what the card means. On the right-hand page are 2 columns, one for the upright meaning and one for the reversed meaning. Then there are 5 meanings, the core meaning, and meanings related to love, money, career, and family. Here's an example from the Hermit card. In the upright core meaning, it says, quote, "The Hermit encourages you to get untangled from petty, superficial distractions. Embark on a spiritual journey or spend time contemplating life in silence. Daily meditations in a quiet place can work wonders for your inner peace and tranquility." Unquote. And here's an example from the reversed column, and this is the reversed career reading. Quote, "The reversed Hermit often represents unemployment or a void in vocation. Becoming hardened and cold will only worsen your prospects." Unquote. The last part of the book gives information on how to read the cards, as well as sample spreads. It also answers some frequently asked questions, such as how you can use tarot to figure out a time frame, and an excellent description of what the many symbols on the cards mean. If you had to buy one book as a beginner, this would be the one I'd recommend. The full color layout is very appealing and the information is solid but not overwhelming. This is not the right book if you want to learn the history of the cards or to delve in depth into the card symbols or meanings. Book number 2 is Going Beyond the Little White Book, A Contemporary Guide to Tarot by Liz Worth. This is another book that I highly recommend because, as it says in the title, it takes you way beyond the little white book that is included in your deck. The chapter on each card has a subtitle that describes what the card means. I chose the 8 of Swords at random, and it said, "You're not as stuck as you think you are." These subtitles are really good synopses of what each card means. The first section of each chapter is about the intention of the card, followed by a mantra or affirmation about the card. Then there's a description of why and when the card appears. The author doesn't talk about upright and reversed cards, but she does talk about what the card means and then what it means in a challenging position. I really like the writing in this book because it feels like you're having a conversation with a friend who's a very seasoned tarot reader. Here's a bit of what the author writes about in the 8 of Swords. Quote, "Out of all the cards in the tarot, this is the one that I most often see when someone feels like they're trapped in a situation and have no other option but to stay. One of the most frequent examples that comes up is when clients are unhappy in their careers but can't see a way out. They can't figure out what their next step might be or what they would do if they left. Of course, the feeling of being trapped can extend to all kinds of scenarios. Sometimes the things that make us feel stuck also make us feel safe and secure. We might depend on them to the point where we feel that we can't let them go. I'm going to skip a couple of paragraphs, and then she says this. The Eight of Swords often appears for people who are otherwise independent. Sometimes people who draw this card express surprise at how they've gotten into their current situation. They know that, in the past, they would have had no problem in figuring out a way forward or wouldn't have let themselves feel so trapped in the first place, but somehow they feel as though they've lost themselves along the way. Unquote. Next, she explains how this card would apply in a career-related reading and a relationship reading. She doesn't talk about reversals, but she talks about how this card would manifest as a challenge in a career-related reading and a relationship reading. Her explanations are always super practical, and oftentimes she'll give alternate interpretation. Finally, she gives 10 questions to consider if the card appears in a reading. For example, in the Eight of Swords, the first question is, what have you led yourself to believe has so much control over you that you can't escape it? These are great questions to answer for yourself if you want to get a deeper understanding of the cards, or to ask clients if you're doing a reading. This is a very practical, easy-to-read book that will add a lot of depth to your understanding of the cards. It also gives you a lot to work with in terms of relationships and career readings. The downside is that there are no images of the cards, and the book is all text, so you might not like it if visuals are important to you. However, I think the fact that she doesn't include images is good because it means that the book is applicable to any deck. So you're not thrown off because you're seeing an image of the Rider-Waite-Smith deck when you read from a completely different kind of deck. Number 3 is Learning the Tarot, a Tarot Book for Beginners by Joan Bunning. This is another excellent book for beginners. I used it so much that the spine is broken. The first 60 pages are a really great introduction to tarot. She talks about the major and minor arcana and gives information about spreads and how to do readings. The next 40 pages are some wonderful exercises to improve your skills. For instance, here's exercise 9.1 called Doing a Reading about a news event. Before I get started, I need to mention that this book was published in 1998, which was back in the days of daily newspapers. Here's what she says, quote, "Go through today's newspaper and choose a topic that interests you. Look for one that is intriguing and somewhat controversial. A short-term media event is a good choice because you will get feedback on the situation quickly. Read over the facts that are available and write a question that covers one aspect of the situation. Write down your interpretation and what you predict the outcome will be. Later, when the situation has resolved somewhat, go over your reading and relate it to what happened. If your interpretation doesn't seem fit, look at the cards again to see if you can find something new in them." Unquote. I think this is an excellent exercise, and they're all really good. And then we get to the cards, which are explained over 2 pages. She begins with 3 to 5 descriptive words. For instance, for the Four of Swords, these words are rest, contemplation, and quiet preparation. The author then expands these words into a section called actions. So under resting, it says, quote, taking a break, giving your body time to heal, avoiding overexertion, finding peace and quiet, relaxing body and soul, taking life easy, unquote. Next, she lists several opposing cards and several reinforcing cards. On the facing page is a small black and white image of the Rider-Waite-Smith card. And then she has a few paragraphs about what this card represents and what it means when it shows up in a reading. If you're somebody who wants to learn tarot based on keywords, this book is an excellent choice. I like that she chooses a few keywords and then expands on them. The only downside of this book, in my opinion, is that it does not contain reversals. She published another book in 2019 called The Big Book of Tarot, How to Interpret Cards and Work with Tarot Spreads for Personal Growth, which you can see here, that explains how to work with reversed cards. This is also an excellent book. Number 4 is Modern Tarot, Connecting with Your Higher Self Through the Wisdom of the Cards by Michelle T. I chose this book because it's different from the other books I own in that it's more like a memoir, as the author talks about each card from the perspective of how it has influenced her life, followed by how you can gain a personal connection with the cards. For example, in the Ten of Wands, her first sentence is, quote, "My shoulders hurt just looking at this card," unquote. That doesn't really help me with the traditional meaning of the card, but it's certainly something that I've also felt when I look at this card. Here's one paragraph from the Seven of Cups, and I think you'll see what I mean. Quote, "It took getting sober for me to understand that the Seven of Cups is a bad card. Alcoholics are magical thinkers, and this is the card of magical thinking. You can imagine so clearly how incredible it's going to be, that relationship, or getting that spiritual practice started, or really taking care of your body. Or, like accomplishing things is actually hard and takes planning and application and chutzpah and stamina. Dreaming about something takes you right to the finish line and to the rosy feelings of accomplishment without any of the work," unquote. After the description, she has actions that you can take to help you work with the cards. This was one of the few tarot books that I listened to on audiobook because I didn't feel the need to take notes. I really enjoyed her perspective of the cards and also learning about her life. The downside of this book is that it does not contain many of the traditional meanings of the cards or information about the reverse meanings, so I wouldn't recommend it for beginners, but it's really a great choice if you're looking for something different and a personal view of the cards. Book number 5 is Secrets of the Waite-Smith Tarot, The True Story of the World's Most Popular Tarot by Marcus Katz and Tali Goodwin. This is a really interesting book because it gives the behind-the-scenes stories of the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot deck and how the illustrator, Pamela Colvin-Smith, chose the images. For instance, the Queen of Wands is shown with a black cat. The authors tell us that Pamela Colman-Smith modeled the Queen based on her friend Edie Craig and her cat Snuffles, and that the chair and sunflowers were found at Small Hythe Place in England, a place where Pamela spent a lot of time. Then they include several photographs. This was the case for many of the cards, and I found the stories behind the images fascinating. Katz and Goodwin have a large private collection of photos, and the book is worth purchasing just for the images. The amount of information about each card varies greatly. Some just have a short description, a one-line divinatory meaning, and a couple of sentences about the reversed meanings. Others are much longer. Pamela Colman-Smith was involved in the theater, and if the images were based on a Shakespearean play, for example, they have included text from the relevant act of the book. This book gave me a much deeper understanding of the cards because I know that the images are based on real places. One that stuck with me is the bridge that we see in both the Four of Wands and the Five of Cups. This is a bridge in Maidstone, England, that Pamela Colman-Smith passed over on her visits to Small Hythe Place, which I mentioned earlier. The bridge in the Four of Wands symbolized the pleasure of arriving, while the same bridge in the Five of Cups symbolized the sadness of departing. I highly recommend this book if you want to understand more about the images on the card and also about Pamela Colman-Smith's life. The only negative of the book is that it's in black and white. It would have been wonderful to see some of the photographs in color. However, given that most of the photos are more than 100 years old, it likely wouldn't have made that much of a difference. Book number 6 is called Tarot Fundamentals. It was edited and compiled by Sasha Graham. This is a new book to my collection, and it is visually very beautiful. It's 633 pages long, so this would be a great coffee table book if you wanted one. It pretty much covers everything you want to know about tarot, and the images are gorgeous. Each card contains several full-color images from different decks, an explanation about what the card means, a description of the symbols, the traditional upright and reversed interpretations, and key words. Something I like is how it lists lessons learned. For instance, in the Eight of Cups, these are Quote, "You can't take it with you. We venture alone. Become the journey. When adventure calls, respond with action. Life is like hiking, full of ups and downs, but worth it in the long run. And life is a journey." Unquote. All the other books I mentioned show just one deck, usually the Rider-Waite-Smith, so I appreciated seeing how each card is expressed in different decks. For instance, the Knight of Swords is depicted as the apprentice of air in the Pagan Tarot, as the unmerciful slayer in the Dark Angels Tarot, as the hunter in nightmares in the Tarot of the Dark Grimoire, and the quiet mistress of the tumbling clouds in the Manga Tarot. After the cards, there's lots of information about what to do with a new deck, how to shuffle, basic symbolism, spreads, how to read cards, history, and a whole lot more. This would be a perfect book if you were somebody who wanted to learn a whole lot about tarot beyond what does the Ace of Swords mean in a reading, or if you were a visual learner and were put off by more text-based books. You could spend a year studying the book and walk away with an amazing understanding of tarot. On the downside, this book contains a lot of information and you might find it overwhelming. If I were new to tarot, I think it would scare me. My big beef is about the images. The book is truly gorgeous, and in particular, I find the images of the tarot decks to be beautiful. What drove me nuts is that a lot of the images were stock photos that didn't add anything to the book. I knew they were stock photos because I recognized them from when I had a business and used many of the same photos. For instance, the title on page 304 and 305 is about selecting your deck. On the left side, it says that tarot is like cooking and each deck has a particular flavor. There's a 3.5 by 4-inch photo of a table with plates of food. Opposing that is a photo of a woman with question marks over her head. A couple of pages later, in a section about tarot and children, half of the page is a photo of a family reading a book. To me, these add nothing and just make the book longer. Book number 7 is Tarot in Love, Consulting the Cards in Matters of the Heart by Elliot Adam. I chose this book because we do a lot of love readings in tarot, and most of the books only give a paragraph or less of an explanation. This book gives a lot more interpretations. Each card begins with a larger-than-life-size black and white image of the card from the Rider-Waite-Smith deck and 1 or 2 paragraphs about what the card represents. Then the author moves into what the card means in a love reading, both in the upright and reversed positions. What I like is that he describes what the reading signifies in 5 categories titled New Relationship, Long-Term Partnership, Intimacy, Seeking Romance, and Desires. And we see the same categories in both the upright and reversed positions. I love this because it's a great reference if somebody asks you a very specific question. Let me give you an example if someone asks about intimacy and you draw the 6 of Swords reversed. It says, quote, "One or more partners may need more physical activity to work out their anxiety. This will help them feel better about their health and physical appearance. If you've both been stuck in a rut, increased exercise will improve intimacy. This card can also signify an unfulfilling routine that must be changed." Unquote. The big benefit is that this book will allow you to give really solid advice in your relationship readings. I also like the large picture of each card so you can see the details. The only downside is the book is in black and white and the paper looks like newsprint. That's not an issue for me because the content was so good, but it's probably not something you'll want to display on your coffee table. Book number 8 is Tarot Plain and Simple by Anthony Lewis. This is currently the book I use most when I'm doing my daily readings. It's about 6 inches by 8 inches in size, so it's easy to keep with my tarot journal and my tarot cards. Under each card name is a short title about what it means. For instance, under the 7 of Pentacles is Perseverance. Next, it explains the meaning of the upright card, which is usually a sentence or 2. Next is keywords and phrases in both a positive and negative interpretation of the card, advice about situations you may encounter, and the kind of people it might represent. The same thing is repeated in the reverse position. The writing is clear and easy to read. The paragraphs are short but comprehensive. I find the situation and advice part to be really excellent. For instance, here's what it says about the Three of Cups. Quote, "There is something to celebrate. Now is the time to have fun. Get ready for a party, wedding, graduation, promotion, birth, or some other joyful occasion. You will be sharing happiness with others. This is a time for celebrating, but there's still work ahead. If you asked about marriage or pregnancy, expect a favorable outcome." The Three of Cups often means that marriage, or divorce that will make a new marriage possible, is on your mind. In a health reading, the Three of Cups promises renewed health and recovery after illness. In career questions, the Three of Cups suggests a hobby rather than a profession. Unquote. As you can see, that's a whole lot of information for a paragraph. There is a large picture of each card under the title. These are from the Robin Wood Tarot. That's my only criticism, as I would prefer the Rider-Waite Tarot since that's what I use. But it's not a big problem as all of the information is applicable regardless of which deck you prefer.
You've made it this far in the video, and I want to stop and ask for a favor if you're not already a subscriber, and that is to please hit the subscribe button. It's free for you, and it will also help me to grow this channel. Plus, it means that you won't miss anything. Thanks so much, and if you're already a subscriber, I truly appreciate your ongoing support. Now let's get back to the video.
Book number 9 is The Big Book of Tarot Meanings, The Beginner's Guide to Reading the Cards by Sam Magdaleno. This is another book that I used heavily in making my videos. It's full color and beautifully laid out. It's also very cleanly written. You don't need to consult a dictionary to figure out what he's saying, which is the case in some books. Each card takes up 3 pages. On the first page is a large image of the Rider-Waite-Smith card that's 7.5 by 4.25 inches in size. That's almost triple the size of a regular Rider-Waite-Smith deck and allows you to see a whole lot more detail. So I feel like that alone is worth the price of the book. On the first page is an introduction to the cards and both upright and reversed keywords. The next 2 pages are upright and reversed descriptions in the following 8 categories: beginnings, career, money, love, friends and family, health, higher guidance, and outcome. The other books I recommend have only a couple of categories, so this is excellent if you're doing readings. What I also liked is that he gives recommended actions for each category. Here's an example from the health section from the Queen of Swords in the upright position. Quote, "The Queen of Swords has trouble expressing emotion. You've been bottling up stress or anxiety and it's taking a toll on your mental health. You likely feel ashamed or embarrassed and you are hesitant to ask for help. Action. First off, you do not need to go through tough times alone. Ask for help. Second, look into ways of releasing energy, such as mindful movement or art." Unquote. And here's what it says in the reverse position. Quote, "The need to be perfect has you ignoring or repressing health concerns. This card can also suggest feeling especially cloudy-minded or scatterbrained. Action. Take time to slow down and silence the continual brain chatter. Meditation and a new creative outlet can be helpful ways to regain your mental focus." Unquote. The only downside of this book is that it just contains the meanings of the cards, so it doesn't talk about things like how to shuffle or how to actually conduct a reading. Personally, I like that it does an excellent job with the cards, and you can find the other information elsewhere. Book number 10 is The Complete Book of Tarot Reversals by Mary K. Greer. I was drawn to this book because it includes reversals in considerable detail, which many of the books I own do not. At the beginning of the book is a great description about how to read reversals. The book is organized with descriptions of each card. At the end of the book, we have several spreads and a sample reading. Each card begins with a description of the upright card, followed by one-word descriptions of traditional meanings. In the minor arcana, each card is covered in 2 pages. About 1/3 of the text is the upright meaning and 2/3 is the reversed meaning. There's also a 2 by 3.5 inch image of a black and white card in the reverse position. There's also a section of traditional meanings in the reverse position. The book was first printed in 2002, and I have the 17th printing from 2021, so it has definitely stood the test of time. I like this book because the descriptions are very detailed and there's a lot of information in a small amount of space. The book is very much like a textbook. Don't expect to sit down with a glass of wine and breeze through it. I used it as a reference book to look up reverse cards when I was seeking more information. I'd buy this book if you wanted to take a deep dive into tarot and are comfortable with an academic type style of writing. The downside is that it's not a very easy read, and there are a lot of references that you might not be familiar with. Here's a paragraph I chose at random, which is the Queen of Wands reversed. Quote, "The Queen of Wands reversed can be a charming, dangerous schemer like Anne Boleyn, whereas her daughter, Elizabeth I, characterizes the upright card. The dynamic drive and success of the upright leads, in the reversal, to labels of witch, bitch, or ballbuster. And, like Zeus's wife Hera, she may become jealous and vengeful because she has been violated, dishonored, and co-opted as a creator. She transforms from fire into conflagration or ice." Unquote. Book number 11 is The Ultimate Guide to Tarot, A Beginner's Guide to the Cards, Spreads, and Revealing the Mystery of the Tarot by Liz Dean. I think that this is an excellent book for beginners. The card photos are in full color, and the typography is easy to read. The first few pages are a good introduction to tarot. Each card is shown on 2 facing pages. On the left side is the name of the card and a 2.5 by 4.5 inch full-color picture of the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot card. There's also information on the element, astrological association, tree of life position, and key meanings. After each major arcana card is a related spread that provides reflections on the cards. I have used some of their spreads, and they are excellent. Under the card is an understanding section, followed by information on the upright and reversed meanings. The understanding section has a lot of detail, and I used this book heavily when I was creating my videos. There are 5 paragraphs for the 4 of Swords. Here are the first 2. Quote, "Existing as it does between the 3, the card of strife, and the 5, the battle card, the 4 of Swords offers welcome rest, an opportunity to recover from the stress and betrayal of the 3 before the onslaught of the 5. The knight shown in this card has temporarily laid down his tools. One sword is displayed lengthwise, the hilt aligning with his head, in the sculpture as part of the tomb to signify his identity as a warrior. The other 3 swords hang above him, secured on the wall, ready for him to take up when he rises. But for now, the knight is at rest, safe from attack and the demands of the assault." The stained glass window symbolizes the world being held at a distance during the knight's period of withdrawal. The figures in the stained glass suggest a monk helping a child or devotee, embodying the medieval knight's commitment to charity. This is echoed in the knight's code of chivalry, which commits to give succor to widows and orphans, and hints at the 2 beggars on the 5 of Pentacles, who are also depicted below a stained glass window, another world they cannot see and be part of. Unquote. I like this book because the information is excellent. It's also well written and easy to understand. The full-color page layouts are very easy to look at. I guess the downside is that the book could have more information, but I think that would take away from it being a beginner's book. Book number 12 is Understanding Tarot, a detailed guide to the Rider-Waite-Smith Tarot cards for both the new and experienced tarot student by Pam Richards. If you watch my videos about the meaning of each card, you'll know that I heavily reference this 427-page book. I've spent most of my adult life as a professional writer, and am very aware of copyright restrictions. It got to the point where I pulled back on sharing information from this book because I didn't want to be accused of copyright infringement. There was a lot that I wanted to share because the information was so good. For instance, here's what the author says about the crown on the Queen of Cups. Quote, "Her gold crown is tall, placing a value on her thoughts as they impact her emotions, as this is where her intuition lies. Her crown acts as a channel for higher emotional wisdom. The Queen is linked to the emotional values of the Empress, which is the third card. There are 3 undines within her card, which are water nymphs, if you don't know, and on the crown are 3 small loops, empty spaces which hold potential as with the 0, with 3 being the number of creation. The crown has 2 sets of 9 circles. Gestation is 9 months, so is a link here to creativity, maternity, and motherhood. To add all 4 sides of her crown by adding the 2 unseen sides, we come to 18, the number of the moon, which rules her sign of Cancer. This brings in her ebbing and flowing, emotional, intuitive nature which rules her. Emotions are the center of her world. However large or small an issue, however much space it fills in the lives of others, it will be her feelings, her own inner being, which governs her actions and reactions." Unquote. The first 368 pages are about the individual meanings of the cards. The first section of each card gives a very detailed description of the symbolism of the card. There's also a 3 3/4 by 2 3/4 inch color image of each card from the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. There is a small in a nutshell section where Pam summarizes the card, followed by a page each for what the card means in the upright and reverse positions. The final 75 pages of the book cover how to use your tarot deck, including how to prepare for a reading and how to formulate a question, information about tarot spreads and how to read them, information about tarot superstitions, and ways to connect with the cards. This is an excellent, extremely comprehensive guide to tarot in both the upright and reverse positions, and I can't recommend it highly enough. So what are the downsides? Other than the images of the cards, which kind of look like they were printed on your home printer, the book is all text, so that might put you off if you're looking for a gorgeous book and not just information. The other downside is that you might find it overwhelming if you're a beginner, although you could just read the "in a nutshell" portion and ignore everything else until you're a more seasoned reader. As an example, here's what she says in the nutshell section of the Page of Swords. Quote, "Words will cause upset. The truth or one's truth mixed with immaturity or a lack of personal experience will lead to temper outbursts or upset. Someone will enjoy causing conflict, and even though what they say may be the truth, it will not be delivered with love. There will be gossip. Tittle-tattle is juicy, as what is private is brought up to be explored by someone who is not respectful of feelings, and rumors are likely." Unquote. And the final book, number 13, is Will You Give Me a Reading? What You Need to Read Tarot with Confidence by Jenna Maitlin. This is an excellent book that is different from the others I recommended. It doesn't include card meanings, so if that's what you're looking for, it's not the book for you. But I feel like it's a must-read. Here's a paragraph from the introduction that I think describes the benefit of the book. Quote, "This journey starts right at the beginning. What do you need to consider as you become a reader? How do you build fluency while also being mindful of the difference between the message and your opinion? How do you tell your Queen of Swords querent what a relationship with the Knight of Wands would be like? Is the future really the future? What about the nature of fate? This book is about your journey toward a querent-centered session where you get to decide your philosophy of reading and what that journey looks like." Unquote. This book is incredibly practical. I couldn't decide what to share because it's all so good, so I opened the book randomly at page 205, which is about self-care. And it wasn't the usual stuff about getting closer to spirit. She talked about getting a repetitive motion injury from shuffling, the need to have an ergonomically comfortable and well-lit workspace, and other issues such as imposter syndrome, difficult querents, how to handle boredom when you're tired of answering the same questions over and over again, and how to deal with compassion fatigue and burnout. Another interesting section is about what to do with querents who reveal or plan something harmful. She tells the story of a murderer who killed his flatmate, then went to a tarot reader for a reading. The tarot reader called the police, but they thought it was a joke and waited an hour to show up. So she spent a very anxious 60 minutes trying to keep him occupied before the police arrived. The author talks about how she won't hesitate to call the police or CPS or an elderly abuse hotline if the querence reveals something that needs to be reported. Every page or so has a reader's tip section that is short but really helpful. Here's one about the issues I mentioned previously. Quote, "It's always a good idea to have a list of crisis numbers relevant to your geographic location. Keep a handy reference sheet for numbers that include emergency services, domestic violence services, homeless shelters, free legal aid, and food banks as a start. If you suspect that your querent is unable to keep the presence of mind to do this for him or herself, offer to be present as they make the call. While you are not a social worker, you can still be instrumental in helping querents get to the place or people who can help them best." Unquote. That gives you just a taste of the book. I think that it's excellent and highly recommend it. As for a downside, it probably includes things that you didn't want to think about and might scare you away from doing readings for other people. Personally, I think it's good to be forewarned. I certainly hadn't considered what I'd do if a murderer requested a reading. Also, as I said earlier, the book doesn't include specific meanings for the cards. So those are the 13 books that I recommend for your holiday shopping, and I think they'd all make great additions to your home library. I'd love for you to comment if you've used these books or if you have any other favorites that you'd recommend. Thanks for watching. Happy Black Friday, and I'll see you next time.